This lesson will cover active and passive voice. Sentences are considered active when the subject, which can also be called the doer or performer, is before the verb, and the direct object, or what's called the receiver, is after the verb. The example reads, Bill will invite Anne. Bill is the performer of the verb will invite, and Anne is the receiver because she is receiving the invitation. For passive sentences, the doer and receiver are switching locations. The structure begins with the receiver, then there is a be verb that is conjugated according to the tense needed. Next is the past participle. Finally, you can write by plus the doer. However, it is optional. The active sentence example, when changed to passive, reads, Anne will be invited by Bill. Let's take a closer look comparing the two voices. Notice how Bill begins the active sentence, but then moves to the end of the passive sentence. However, Anne is moved from the end to the beginning. Also, most importantly, there is a be verb, will be, and then the past participle in the passive sentence. To form passive voice, there are two important things to keep in mind, and we'll dive deeper in upcoming slides, but I have summarized the concepts here. The verb tense needs to be the same whether you're changing a sentence from active to passive or passive to active. Also, there must be a receiver or direct object. In other words, the verb needs to be transitive. Let's look at the second example. Eamon ate the cookies. In this case, ate is a transitive verb because there is a direct object. What did he eat? The cookies. It can be changed to a passive sentence. The cookies were eaten by Eamon. Notice that the be verb is were. This is the simple past. I kept the tense simple past because in the active sentence it says ate, which is the simple past. This slide covers verb tenses in active and passive voice. Notice how the verbs in red are all the be verb conjugated for the verb tense. However, the past participle remains the same regardless of the verb tense. Use this chart as a reference for your exercises. The progressive tense uses the be verb. However, progressive tenses have a present participle, not a past participle. What does this even mean? Well, let's take a look at the examples. For progressive verbs, you have a be verb and then an ing, as in taking. For a passive voice, you can have a be verb and then a past participle, in this case, taken. Earlier, I mentioned that to form a passive sentence, the verb must be transitive, which means it has a direct object. Examples of transitive verbs are find, eat, turn on, and love. Intransitive verbs cannot have objects and therefore cannot be passive. Examples include sleep, arrive, smile, and die. So why is passive voice used? The first reason depends on the importance of the subject, verb, or object. If the subject is less important than the verb or object, the writer wants to emphasize the verb or object, then a passive sentence is best. For example, the active sentence, a college offered my son a scholarship, would be better as a passive sentence because the object and action are more important than the subject. The passive sentence reads, my son was offered a scholarship. Also, passive sentence could be, a scholarship was offered to my son. Another reason to use passive voice is when the subject is unknown. For example, the bank was robbed last night. Maybe the robbers have not been caught yet and are unknown. The doer or performer is optional, and in many cases should be deleted if adding it seems redundant or obvious. Take a look at these example sentences. The first two have the doer, and the last two do not. Do the first sentences need the doer, or can they be deleted? Do the last two sentences need the doer? Do they make sense without? Pause the video to read the sentences and decide whether the doer is needed or not. In the first sentence, the doer is actually redundant. Also, in the second sentence, the doer is unnecessary. However, in the third and fourth example, the reader is left wondering who the subject is or who the doer is. Therefore, it should be added. This concludes my video on active and passive voice. Good luck and happy learning.